Hello and welcome to the Audiobook Club. In this episode, I'm joined by the fantastic award-winning audiobook narrator and voiceover artist Tom Jordan. Tom, thank you so much for joining me on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, John.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's really great to talk to you today. I really can't wait to get into all of this with you. And I was looking on your website earlier, a really great website, by the way.
Thanks.
And I read that you've been doing voiceover work for 25 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably closer to 30. Maybe I should update that. I started back in the early 90s. But it's not been straight 30 years either. It's been I've stopped and had a family and things
Yeah.
things happened along the way, but I started 30 years ago. Somebody just, friend of a friend is kind of how things worked. I always thought broadcasting would be fun. I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, well, listen, I work for this company that does CBT, which was computer-based training back in the day, and we're having some computer-based training stuff done, and if you come into the voiceover studio, maybe you'd like to voice some of these things. Your voice would be great for it, and I did, and I sat in on this stuff, and they were hiring union work back then, and I was non-union, of course, because I'd never done anything like that before.
Yeah.
But I sat in on it, and at the end of the session, not knowing anything about union or non-union or what it was going to pay, but I was poor, and I was living in a little apartment that in Southern California that just cost me a fortune, month to month, basically living paycheck to paycheck. And the guy was like, okay, well, here's your paycheck for today. And it was $710 or something. I guess union rate back in the day was like $700 an hour.
Yeah.
And I was just stunned. I was like, oh, wow, this is what this is all about. So I got two more sessions out of them for that. And I got the bug because not only was it easy and fun, and of course I had to drive to Burbank for that from Long Beach, which was about, an hour and a half each way or something with traffic. But
Yeah.
still, I was like, oh, this is really cool. So that's how I kind of got the voice acting bug. It was all about the money at the time. But then, and that kind of died out, and it wasn't the beginning of a great fruitful career because but I did kind of get the feeling that you could make a lot of money in a little amount of time, but back in the day before the internet, which this was, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do auditions any other way than to just drive around and do the auditions, or there
Yeah.
was no emailing auditions to any place. So it was a lot of legwork and a lot of driving in my little Volkswagen Bug back and forth to LA to do auditions. And now you can do dozens of them a day from the comfort of your home, and you've been able to do that for 20 years, but back then you couldn't. So a lot of driving around to do auditions that you just weren't getting the jobs for. So
Yeah.
I kind of let that go for a while until the internet allowed you to do auditions that way. And then I started getting back into it a little bit in the early 2000s. And then podcasting happened, and I did that. I was kind of an early adopter of that, 2006.
Yeah.
I did several podcasts. Didn't make any money with those, but I liked being behind the microphone and had a lot of fun. And my wife and I had like a couple cast going. We did about 50 episodes of that. And that was really neat too. We
Nice.
still have those saved because those were an hour to 90 minutes long of just us talking about our lives and as the kids were growing up. And that lasted for a couple of years, just kind of stretched out over that amount of time. That was neat to have, kind of looking back at that part of our lives. And then I kind of let it go for a little while. Then about 6 years ago, I started getting into it again, after the kids were grown up to the point where I had a little bit more time, and I thought, I'm going to get back into voiceover. So I did. And the voiceover led to, I found a mentor who was doing audiobooks, and he said, you should really think about audiobooks. That scared the heck out of me because these are long form things
Yeah.
that are just, wow, well, you know what this is like, John, because you do them too. And it's just, that was so intimidating to me. But he said, yeah, just give it a try. And so I put my profile up on ACX, and I'm giving my full bio here. So
No, that's exactly what I was
Is
going to
that
ask.
what you wanted? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
You just turn me on, and there's no off switch here. So, but anyway, so I put my bio up. I put my samples up on ACX after. Because in the meantime, I'd gotten coaching. I'd gone through a lot of coaching. I had demos made for voiceover, and I had experience before. So this was not just coming out of nowhere and suddenly
Of course.
becoming an audiobook narrator. I put the legwork in and the time and effort and a lot of coaching done. So I did that, and within 3 days, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but I found there was a new author that had just put some books up, and they were sweet historical romances. And her name is Barbara Goss, and she'll probably be happy that I mentioned her name because she's still out there writing. And so she hired me for a series, and so I did a few books for her, and I did the same thing that all new narrators do. I gave myself too tight of deadlines for them. I decided I was going to do one a month, and of course, with a full-time day job that pays the mortgage, I was stressed to the hilt. And in fact, in the first couple months, I got in a car accident because I was so stressed that I wasn't thinking what I was doing. Yeah, it wasn't a bad one, but it was enough to spend some money getting my car fixed. Just because I was doing all the wrong things, I made my deadlines too tight, and I didn't realize at the time that you can really work with the authors or the rights holders to stretch those deadlines out, and that this is a relationship that you have with the authors, that you can work on deadlines and that type of thing. So that's what I ended up doing, and it worked out great. Then from then on, it's just a matter of, and as you've I'm sure found out too, you make relationships with authors that end up getting series for you, and pretty soon you don't have to be hunting around on ACX and some of the other platforms for work. That the work just tends to come to you. You find that either authors talk to other authors, or they enter into a series that you just start to get work that kind of flows your way. So that's the really long answer to your very simple question.
No, that was a perfect answer. I agree completely. I mean, from my experience, 90% of my work has come from essentially just networking, and then I might do a book for an author, and then their friend gets in touch, and then their friend gets in touch, and that can lead on to dozens and dozens of titles in the end. So I definitely agree with that. So just going right back to the start again, so you say that you sort of offered gigs right at the start because of your voice. Was there no performance history before then, prior to then? Did you have an interest in acting or broadcasting or anything like that before then, or was it you fell into it, said this is super fun and you want to explore from there?
So I was one of these kids that always carried a cassette recorder and a microphone around with me. So let's go back to 1975, right? I was 10 years old and I had a microphone and a little Radio Shack cassette deck with me, and I was walking around doing interviews to people, some of whom I didn't even know, or it was just within my own household and bugging my parents or my friends or whatever. And I would do funny voices, and so I started out doing skits and stuff like that. My buddies, two of them in particular, were into making films, so I acted in the films, and I was always the actor, and I did filmmaking as well. Got into college. I was a film major in college. I also took acting classes in college too, but acting wasn't the main thing. My friends who were in film as well used me as the actor in their films. So that's why I don't teach performance right now. When I do any kind of consulting at all, I do the business side of audiobook and voiceover consulting. I don't do the acting part of it. I'm somebody who's got a natural propensity for acting. I've kind of got a natural propensity for characters and that type of thing. I can break in and out of characters, and I've always been able to do that because I've been doing it since I was 8 years old, of just coming up with various voices and stuff like that. And that's kind of what's always been part of me, thus the microphone and doing all the silly skits throughout forever. And that's just the kind of geeky kid I was. But it turned out okay, right? Because it turned out to be, what was this all about? And this is what it's all about. It's about me being able to come in and out of voices, sometimes 8 or 10 of them in a room in an audiobook, in a fiction audiobook like I was this morning, confounded by how many characters there were in a room, but still being able to break out into all the voices, going, oh, that's where somebody this morning, I was doing a live TikTok, and they said, is this pre-recorded? How are you getting all the voices? I said, no, it's not pre-recorded. And somebody else chimed in and said, no, be quiet. He's working. So it was just kind of funny. So anyway, so that's kind of where it came from. I've got a natural propensity for acting, like somebody that might be able to draw or somebody that might be able to play the piano can play the piano without a lot of lessons. But that's also why I don't teach, because people that are really good at acting, that have taken a lot of acting, have the theory down of how to act, and they can teach the theory of how to act. And that's what I don't have inside of me. Even though I've taken acting classes and improv classes and stuff like that, that's why I don't touch that. I leave that to the professionals that want to teach acting. So, but I teach the business side because I've had a lot of hard knocks through the years as far as learning, and I like to teach people my mistakes and what not to do, and the easier way of getting around some of those to more streamlined path to success. So, hopefully that answers your question there.
No,
So
it's
it's just more than anything else, just kind of being a natural class clown and making voices and doing all those other things that kind of led to, oh, this is what it can do with that, you know.
So having that sort of in your repertoire, in your DNA, as it were, do you think when you eventually then moved from, or not moved, but then added as an addition audiobook work, do you think that was perhaps what sort of attracted you to it in the long run, or at least sort of allowed you to stick with it long term and consistently? That idea of playing around with the characters and getting that sort of excitement.
I think so. I'm pretty certain of that, because being able to jump from one voice to the next and being able to come up with the character repertoire that, you know, we've all kind of got voices in our head of some sort or the other, and the characters that we draw from are characters that we may have held on for a long time, or they could be characters that we suddenly just come up with. Now, we prep books before we read them, and with fiction, that's obviously really important. But there's always that character that even if you've prepped the book, that's like, you know, the orderly walked in. He doesn't even have a name, right? But you have to come up with a voice for an orderly, and being able to do that on the fly and have the voice different than anybody else in the room. That kind of spontaneous improvisation is something that I think did come from all of that before. That's not to say that you can't do that without the prior stuff that I've done, but I think that definitely helps, and it did make it a lot of fun. I think your question's really good, in that when I first started doing audiobooks and I came upon these different characters, and that's what I liked about the historical romances, the wagon train and the mail order bride stuff. They're fun. And I don't mean this in any other way than a good way, but they're easy reads. They're comforting. They're the hallmarks of the prairie. You know, they're just really kind of, they're fun reads. They're easy reads. The characters are believable. They're lovable, and they were just a great way to cut my teeth, if you will, on audiobooks. And I'm really glad I did those first, rather than like a science fiction book with 100 different characters with made up names you can't even pronounce if you're reading them, let alone trying to pronounce them out loud. Because I've actually kind of stayed away from science fiction, because I've heard some horror stories of, I've done a couple, but it's not my forte. So had I gone right into nonfiction without characters, I may not have liked it as much. So your question's valid. It's a really good question. I think it was the characters that made me kind of fall in love with narration.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. It's certainly something, again, that I can relate on my own experiences. The bit that I most enjoy, and then also being able to get into books that you wouldn't necessarily read in your own time, and then you come away with like new favorite books, or books you come away thinking, I had the blast reading that, and I would have never have gone near it. You know, it's not my typical genre. In my own time, it's really good. So recently, you worked with Audible Studios on. Am I getting this right? Is it The Least of Us? Was that the project?
Right. Yeah.
With
The
Audible
Least of
Studios.
Us.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was that like working? With Audible Studios? Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
It was
compared
great.
to independent authors and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was great. I enjoyed it. There's just great people there, and nicest people that they walk you through all the steps that it takes to kind of onboard you into their repertoire of narrators. There's a lot of kind of paperwork to do, if you will, for the payroll portion of it and so forth, but nothing that you can't handle. It took a couple days worth of emails back and forth, things like that. But it was great and really nice, really great people. A lot of the people that they're working with now are working from home and home studios. The past couple of years has really proven that can work. So they wanted to get a studio sample, which was fine. My studios, as you know, can be quiet most of the time if I record early morning like I do. Later on in the day, it gets a little bit crazy. But early morning worked out great. That's when I record. So that was fine. And it was a really good experience. And the author, Sam Quinones, they wanted me to contact. Now, not every big publisher is like this, but Audible encouraged me to contact the author to talk with them and to get some information about the book, and especially about some pronunciations. There was a lot of Spanish words in it, a lot of city places within Mexico, locations in particular that I needed to get the pronunciations for, and he was readily available for that.
That's great. So people, I was looking through what people were saying, the reviews and stuff, and people are loving it. He's got some fantastic reviews, some fantastic things, and it just sort of led me to wondering what your sort of relationship is like checking on reviews and sort of Googling yourself, as it were. And I just wondered what your sort of experience with that is, because some people are very, I won't go near it, usually through bad experiences.
Right.
And then other people just can't help but take a peek. And I just wondered what your sort of thoughts and experiences were like with reviews, feedback from sort of audiences.
I've been fortunate to the bad reviews that I get, I can usually dismiss as, oh, they just must not know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I get some that just say, they might say, oh, monotonous, and I'll listen back and I'll think, no, that's not right, because the review before that said, boy, what a great varied voice he had. Something.
Yeah.
And you also get reviews. It's like with anything else. It's like when you get a bad review for a toaster on Amazon because it arrived late. It's like that has nothing to do with the toaster. So you get those types of things. I'm one of the people that actually I do read reviews, and I like the ones that obviously are praising me, but some of them. I like the ones that just because they actually go into more detail. He provided me with the character depth that I was looking for in the way that he did this character. So the ones that actually provide a little bit more information are more helpful, obviously, but you can't expect that from everybody. And quite frankly, a lot of times what reviews do, and I'm sure you've read your share of them as well, is they kind of give a synopsis of the book instead of a review of the book, which is kind of interesting. But I do read them. I don't read all of them. It's gotten to the point now with, I don't know, 60 or 70 titles out there that I don't really keep up, but they can be kind of fun. Some of the older titles I don't track anymore at all, but they're out there. Every once in a while, I'll just kind of go back and take a look.
Yeah. So. I was really eager right at the start when when my first few titles were up, and then that sort of taught me to really look squinting and with covering it like that, working up the courage to go in. But I think. Yeah, I'm a little bit sort of 50-50 with it, because sometimes, what they're saying can be really valid, and it can sort of open your own eyes to, oh, I'm doing something wrong. Because if, 10, 15 people are saying, I didn't understand what this character was saying, or this, this accent was really bad, then you think, okay, well, I need to work on it if it's a, consensus look. And then you get some people who just seem to hate you as a person rather than anything, which is always a little bit off-putting.
Well, I've heard you do an American standard accent that's fantastic.
Oh, thanks, man. It was. I've had.
I was like, wait a minute. I thought he was British. What the heck? I mean, I think you must have been on TikTok, and I was blown away. It was really good.
Oh, thank you. I do. The majority of my stuff I narrate in sort of general American, or do a bit of sort of New York, American. And I had a review quite recently from a book. I was doing two. It was a dual narration, but I was voicing two main characters. One was American, one was British, and so I just used my own voice for that. And one of the comments, the top comments were, his British accent's a bit wonky. And I thought, I went in cocky thinking I had that one down.
Oh man, accents are kind of interesting, right? Because like I can, and you've heard mine. It's just hit and miss. Like I can, and it just depends. Like I had a book, and it was before you started editing for me, but there was a book where I had to do a Jamaican accent. It was a main character's best friend, and he was in a few scenes, and I got it down, man. It was like, and I can't do it now because I would have to go back and research it again and listen back to myself. But because I always get people say, "Oh, do it right now." I'm like, I can't. It took me a couple of weeks just to get it down, but But I was able to do it, and then but there's other ones like, oh man, there's some French ones. And so what you do is, at least for me, what I do, and I tell people this, when they always ask about accents, is that I give a flavor of the accent. I try not to do, unless I can really nail it, I'll give a flavor of it, and that goes for my British as well as a French, which I can really just that's really kind of weird. Irish isn't too bad, although a lot of things for me kind of dovetail into Irish if I'm not careful. there's like this, I'll start doing one, and all of a sudden I'll start hearing Irish, and I'll have to stop, and I'll go, wait a minute, that's Irish, that's not supposed to be that. So I have to catch myself a lot. But if you do a dusting, if you do a flavor of the accent, for me, I think you're better off, unless you can really nail it, because and like this current book that I'm doing, like the Remy, the character of Remy, who's just kind of got this kind of generic, kind of an Eastern European accent that's real generic, and I had to give her, she's a mystic, and I wanted to give her something that set her aside from the other characters, because the other characters, all the female characters, and there's quite a few of them in this book, they can sound the same. If one's a little more breathy than the other, one's a little older, but otherwise I just want to give her something else. So that's the generic kind of a Eastern European accent, which nobody can put their finger on. It's not German, it's not,
Yeah.
Bulgarian, it's not whatever. So you just play around with them. You kind of have
Yeah.
fun, and hopefully you're not offending anybody or whatever else. But there's cultural considerations nowadays too, right? So,
Yeah.
I've had books in the past, and just in the past couple years, where they're looking for urban, black male and that type of thing. And so you either have a choice of working with the author, and is she sure you want that? Are you sure that's what you want? And they are, then you give it your full, urban
Yeah.
black male, and you just hope for the best and hope that, what you're doing is okay. And otherwise you give it a flavor of it, or but you can't go against that. And like when it says that, I guess it was the last book that I was giving. Oh, it was an Indian accent. It was for Forsaken, and they wanted an Indian accent. My Indian accent is okay, but not terrific. But they said it was an Indian accent to the point where the main character had trouble understanding it. So I had to give it enough of an accent. I couldn't just give it a flavor of an accent, because the main character had trouble understanding it. So I had to go and be true to the manuscript. And what we're forced to do sometimes is do that. So you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
I think that's something that not many people may understand right off the bat, is the amount of thought that goes into the performance, especially when it comes to, as you say, making sure that everything's sort of correct, as it were, and not offending anybody. Because nobody wants to do that. Everyone wants to have a good time listening to it. And then obviously you have to stay true to the source material and do what the author or the rights holder wants you to do as well. So it can be a little bit of a juggling act. Now this leads me to my sort of next question, really. We have a lot of sort of, new narrators listening into this. And one of the stages that I often see on like forums and things of people asking the most about is the pre-production stage, the prep. And I wanted to know your process of pre-production. What do you reach out? Do you reach out to the author? How much do you stay in contact with the author? What questions do you ask? That sort of thing. When you annotate a manuscript, obviously, other than underline the characters, the things that you need to do, is there anything extra that you add to it? How much sort of prep time and what sort of tasks do you put into that pre-production before you start recording?
Right. So, when it comes to working with independent authors and rights holders, you do as much as you have time for. And sometimes it's ongoing, So working with the author now, somebody like Andrew Van Wey, who did Blindsight and Forsaken, he gives me a full character Bible. I mean, everything except maybe character sketches. He'll give me like pages of, and just great notes, the age and their disposition, and sometimes their history that he'll write in as a background. So that type of thing is really helpful when it comes to getting into the character and not just trying to interpret the text from the manuscript, but knowing the characters backwards and forwards. So that's great. So that's really helpful. You don't get that with everybody. The current book that I'm reading, I didn't get that, but fortunately, a lot of the characters are from the previous 2 books as part of this series. Some of the newer characters in there, I'm just having to kind of, from the context of the manuscript, get a feel for who they are, where they're coming from, and make notes accordingly. So you have to write your own character Bible in that sense. And I use Evernote, and I have a different page for each one of the different notes for each one of the books that I do, and I create the character notes, and I have to refer to them. And of course, I keep a separate file for all of the voices too, so I can refer back to the voices, make sure that I get the voices as close as I can along the way. Now, with this current book, one of the things that I wish I would have done, and I have to keep stopping and starting when I'm doing my live TikToks and reminding myself and telling the TikTok live people that are watching that, boy, I really wish that I would have hired somebody to prep this for me, because I didn't have time to do, well, I don't know, maybe I had time to do it myself, but this would have been a great book to hire somebody. And you can hire people to prep the manuscripts for you. And it would have been as simple as going through and color coding the dialogue based upon who is speaking, because this is another book where you've got a lot of people talking in a room all the time. This is a dialogue heavy book. It's just I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's a slog. It is just taking forever to get through this thing, and it shouldn't, because it's not an overly complicated book, and it's not overly long. It's just so much dialogue. There's very little exposition. There's very little talking about the rooms, the settings, or anything. It's just people in a room talking, and which in a sense is kind of fun, but I really wish. But so here's the thing, and here's a good and answering your question, but also giving new narrators a little bit of a hint of what sometimes takes place. And every time, really, unless you color code dialogue, and you can go through and spend days color coding dialogue or have somebody else do it for you. But so let's say that the sentence is, I'd like to have a bourbon and Coke and maybe throw some pretzels in there, Steve said. Well, now Steve said is at the end of that line. So the dialogue tags at the end of that line. Now, if you're starting to read that, you're reading this, but in the meantime, your eyes are scanning ahead to see Steve said. So you have to, while you're reading, your eyes have to still scan ahead to say that. You can't stop. See, so you actually are scanning while reading aloud. Or you stop, like I do quite often, because the dialogue tag is hidden so far down that you end up having too long of a pause between the last sentence and the current sentence that you're reading that you have to stop. And that happens a lot. And that's why I'm explaining to my TikTok live audience that I have to stop again. And why do you stop so much? Well, because, it's like, because I've got, 92 lines of dialogue with 8 people in a room, and I've got the dialogue tags hidden, the he said, she said, all the way down at the bottom. And I don't know, when you've got 2 people in a room, you can pretty much guess that they're going to be going back and forth all the way down. No big deal. 3 people, that gets more complicated. 6 people, forget about it. So you do have to always scan ahead to see who's talking. Now, if things were color coded and you kind of get used to that color coding, like muscle memory, yellow is Steve, blue is Sarah, so forth, then you can just go ahead and read as you go. That would have made this book so much easier. So as far as prep goes, that would have been one way to go. Prepping for nonfiction is a little bit different. It's easier for me, prep for nonfiction, than it would be for this. Then it's just a matter of really going through and making sure you get the pronunciation right of all of the words that are in there. Because, again, names, places, I don't want to say it's easier. Boy, Driven was a real interesting book to do. That one had a lot of... And that one came back, as you know, with the names of people that I didn't realize were going to be so difficult to pronounce, just as friends in the industry, and place names and restaurant names and things like that. Boy, that took forever to get right. Finally did. But
it was a good book, though. It's really enjoyable to. I really enjoyed listening to that.
Good.
That was really good.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so that's out there too. But boy, and we had a few just kind of launched all at once, and Forsaken should be out in the next few days here. So yeah.
Got some exciting things coming out.
Yeah, finally. We kind of went through a period there where it was just a lot of reading and nothing launching. Now all of a sudden things are launching, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm going to go back to talking about TikTok a little bit, if that's okay. So this podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voice's audiobook marketing program, a program offering education and support for authors on their quest to get their content in front of as many relevant eyes and ears as possible, and mastering their brand marketing. Now, I know that you are very active on TikTok and have been this past year, and are getting a lot of engagement. And I would love to know, what is it about TikTok that attracts you to that platform specifically? And have you noticed an effect on your business after uploading consistently on TikTok?
So to answer the first part of that, I think it was just about a year ago that I started thinking about creating videos for YouTube, just kind of videos to help new people in audiobook narration and voiceover. And in fact, I bought a blue screen, and I was looking into doing it with webcams or another camera or whatever. And my daughter was on TikTok, and I started looking at that, and I downloaded the app, and I never thought that I was going to use it for anything else. And I think even a year ago, there were fewer older people on TikTok, and as the year went on, much to the chagrin of the 19-year-olds out there, the older people are there, man. And but you can keep on flipping past us if you want to. Which is fine. But I think there's some wisdom and some knowledge out there. And that's kind of what I was seeing. And also I just started seeing some audiobook narrators out there as well. So I was like, oh, this is cool. People like Natalie Naudus, who at the time I think had 8,000 followers, and now she's got 112,000 followers, which it just blows my mind. Not that I don't believe it, because I think she's great, but I think it's just fantastic. And it speaks to the fact that, you can do this. And, and so I'm getting up to, I think I'll probably have 10,000 within the next few weeks, and that's something that's pretty cool. In fact, there's a voiceover service that I'm going to approach. I'm not going to mention it now, but I'm going to approach when I get to 10,000 about maybe sponsoring so that I can get that service for a little bit less money than I'm paying for on a regular basis. With 10,000, it's not much because 10,000 isn't much in the TikTok world, but it's a good round number. So I thought I'd give it a shot.
I think
So
I think the audience as well, with it being very specific with audiobook narration and people who are interested in audiobooks, I think it counts more though, rather than, because you can get quite vague channels, which can have like 1 million, but they won't have like very many sort of, their rate of return might not be as high.
That's true. That's true. When you start talking about the niche audiences, yeah, that's true. And so, and I do, primarily audiobook narration, but it's a lot of voiceover stuff too. And I'll do live Q&As that. So in addition to the mornings, I do like Monday through Fridays, I'll do mornings, and this is Pacific time here in California, but it's like 6:15 a.m., which is tough but I'm trying to do it early so that I can record without a lot of noise. And I start earlier than that to record, but then I also record live on TikTok 6:15 to about 7. That's when I start my day job. But and that's kind of neat. I'll have anywhere between. It starts off and you get 50 people, and it narrows down to 4 by the end of the time you're reading. 3 of which are probably asleep by then. But that's okay because I've heard my voice is very soothing. So if they want to sleep, it's great. I'll just read quietly, let them sleep. But I don't mind. It's whatever's out there, and I've got some moderators now, which is great because I can't read and have this going on over here with the camera facing me, and the comments that start flowing, especially in the first 10 or 15 minutes, can be distracting and sometimes not appropriate. So I've got moderators there that are awesome now, and they just mute people that are inappropriate. And then I'm like, this is so cool. And they just show up and they just moderate. And every time they show up, they're a moderator automatically. So I'm like, this is great. But so that was the first part of the question. Is it that I think I answered? What was the second part of your question again?
So it was, have you noticed an effect on sort of the business?
The business.
After consistently.
Yeah, especially in my consulting part of it, because I'm always telling people that people are coming up with questions when I do the Q&A for voiceover and audiobook Q&A, and that's live, and I get a lot of people that are really interested, and I go, well, I'll know that you're interested because you'll look me up and you in my link tree in my profile on TikTok, and you'll find a way to shoot me an email message because I'm old and email works for me, and I don't know of any other way of doing this because you can't, how could you communicate live on TikTok, right? So find my email and send me an email, and they will, and interestingly enough, these are people that are in their 20s and 30s, and they're trying to find something else to do, or they're trying to do something in addition to what they're doing, and they don't mind spending the $45 for a 30-minute consultation, or the $85 for an hour, which I just had somebody do the other day. And this guy was no older than my oldest son, but he wanted to spend the money for an hour, and I gave it to him, and we had a blast. We took a deep dive into ACX to see what was out there and to see what audiobook narration was all about. So those types of things are great, and that's just keeps on going. It's a couple a week now consultations, when before it was a couple a month, and that's just from going a couple nights a week, doing some Q&As on TikTok live. So that's really kind of nice, and it's fun, and I'm helping the community. I'm not doing it just to drum up business. I don't come out and say, hey, by the way, I've got a consulting business. All I do is present information, and when somebody says, how do I find out more information, I go, just email me. And by the way, if I can answer their question without touting my consultation, I will. If they're just looking for, send me that link to that Facebook group that you mentioned, I will, and I leave it like that. But if they want more information, I give it to them. And I said, hey, check out my website and look at my consultation stuff. So
I think the things that I've noticed from your TikTok is so sort of real and genuine, and obviously you know what you're on about anyway, but it's really obvious that you know what you're talking about. And I think it's such a valuable resource for people, especially at the live reads and things. It can be really, if you're starting out and maybe a little bit sort of shy or don't really know if you're sort of doing it right, especially because there's not that much coverage of people narrating audiobooks. Obviously you can go listen to an audiobook, but there's not that much coverage out there of people, of the process of doing it, and I think for people to see that is really, really helpful, for myself included.
Oh, good, thanks. Yeah, there's and I've seen you do your live reads as well, which are great. There's hardly any any males doing the live reads. There's a lot of females, and there's very few people like me that make as many mistakes as I do doing live reads. So I think that's really helpful for the newbies to be able to see people like myself that make mistakes all the time. Now you could watch the female narrators that can read paragraph after paragraph without any errors whatsoever. And what are you learning from that, for crying out loud? You need to learn that there's mistakes to be made out there, and doggone it, Tom's going to make them. So plus bloopers are fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think I was watching Andy Serkis read. He sort of filmed himself reading The Hobbit, and that guy's that is just second to none.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Yeah, and the people that can do the tough things, like the rooms filled with 8 people, and do it without error after a couple of paragraphs, I'm like, what is that? How does that work? But again, getting back to the education portion of it, getting back to there's nothing wrong with showing people what punch and roll is all about. Like, how do you stop and how do you correct that error, and why did I stop? And there's a lot of that I do on the TikTok lives, and I think there is value to that. Like, I know, and I happen to I've gotten in the habit now of speaking through it. Like, I'll say, oh, I just said and instead of at, and so and I say that as I'm going back and moving the cursor back and re-recording it. Or I'll say stepped off the porch and stepped off of the porch, things like that. So I'll let people know my mistake as I go, and that's just kind of coming out now. It's just my inner dialogue, but it's coming out and people understand what's going on. So they kind of get the feel, oh, that's why he's going back and redoing that. And it's just that little tiny mistake. And I'll say, yeah, because you want to be true to the manuscript as possible. So otherwise my editor's going to get after me, and I can't have that happen. So yeah.
I think it's really nice as well to know that because you have so many people messaging you with their interest of starting this venture of going into voiceover or going into audio narration. I think it's quite nice to have that excitement around it, and for pushing that and making it more of a because if there's more people interested in narrating them, there's going to be more people interested in listening to them. There's going to be banging on to authors saying, get your audiobook made, get this out into audiobook, even more, and grow that industry. I
think so too. Yeah, and there's authors that I follow on TikTok as well, and authors follow me. And I think that it's getting that out there and letting people know that there's a whole new way to market your craft, and so it's a good thing. For sure.
Absolutely. Now,
it's fun.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, that's fun.
Yeah, I think I meant to say this earlier, actually, as well. It's another thing that I noticed from your TikTok account. You make it look so fun and enjoyable. And I think that's probably why so many people are wanting to do it, is because it looks like you're having a blast. Even the difficult bits, even talking about the challenges, it looks like it's worth it. Which I think sometimes a little bit difficult to get when you're on your own.
It is, and I'm trying not to just. I don't get angry when I'm reading and make a mistake either. Most of the time, I laugh it off, which I think is a helpful thing too. Because even when you're under the gun, it just, for a deadline or whatever, that you could work with the author most of the time to push the deadline back a few days just to get things done. So it's no big deal. You gotta have fun with it, because if you're not, then you're probably not in the right field.
This is I hadn't prepared this, but just sort of my own interest, because audiobook narration is quite a solitary, you're sort of confined for long periods of time and stuff. And I know that you have a writer's job as well during the day, but I just sort of wondered, is how do you kind of cope with that, working from home, working sort of isolated for long periods of time? Do you cope well with that? Do you like being on your own for long periods of time? Or can you get a little bit of cabin fever sometimes?
No, not really. I mean, the audiobook narration early mornings works out fine for me. The rest of the family is asleep, and that's fine. Then I start my day job around 7. I've got an hour of that up here in my office / editing bay, part of my studio, and then I bring my wife coffee downstairs. She works from home 3 days a week and goes in 2 days a week to her office. So my dogs are downstairs, and my 96-year-old dad lives with us. So he's downstairs, and I've got a teenage boy who's a senior in high school that goes off to school, but otherwise, and he'll be going to university next fall. But so things are still lively around the house. I've got things happening. If I was living alone and this was all that I'd be doing, I'd probably be going outside or going to a coffee shop and getting out and doing that type of thing as well. It helps to have have Zoom meetings, to have interaction with people like yourself, to be able to. There's ways of getting around it. I think that COVID played a number on us, for getting out and doing those types of things, and the inability to get out of the house if you were on your own, and socialize and to do that type of thing. Unfortunately, was a couple tough years there for people, but hopefully we're starting to move away from that and to be able to see brighter future. But I still think I don't feel that isolation. My hours alone are more of a happy solitary time rather than any kind of a loneliness. So that's not a bad thing. Plus I've got all these voices in my head that seem to keep me occupied, and so that helps.
Yeah, I mean, I just I live in a tiny little village, so it's not unusual for me to even go for a walk for an hour and a half and not see anybody at all. Like it's sort of quiet. There's sort of petrol station right at the edge, and that's it. There's no other shop or anything like that. And then I only live with my partner Jess, and she's working all the time, but she's a teacher and doing great things there. Yeah. So I can sometimes at the end of the day be my voice can be sort of getting to the weary stage, and I've been narrating for so long, I've been doing other things, and then I've realised that I've spoken to nobody at all.
Oh wow, yeah. You've spoken to a microphone all day long. Yeah.
It's it can be a little bit strange. I wonder sometimes if if my neighbours are looking back at me, wondering why I'm staring out the window so much, longing for life.
Yeah. Well, next time that happens, give me a call. I mean, we're 8 hours apart, but you can always talk to me. So, don't let it get to the point where we're starting to go stir crazy. So, it's okay. It's all right. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
So, talking about that, one of the most joyous things about being a narrator is, of course, the narrator community, and being able to meet so many lovely, talented people, either through dual narration jobs, chat rooms, Facebook groups, Twitter, and the rest of it. So sometimes when a narrator is just starting out, these places can often look a little intimidating, or even are just hard to find. Have you any advice about how one could become more involved within the narrator community? Have you got any sort of go-to places when wanting to converse with the gang, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, love it or hate it, Facebook groups for narration and for voiceover are wonderful. And you may not want to join Facebook for any other reason, and you don't have to for any other reason. You don't have to put anything personal on there at all. Join it for your business, for your voiceover or your audiobook narration business, and join early on. If you're new to this or thinking about getting into it, join and create a profile, and do it, because the people that you're going to meet in your early days as a narrator or a voice actor, and you can have a foot in both worlds, by the way, you don't have to just choose. That's what I do. These are the people that are going to work along with you for forever. These are the people that are going to become your mentors. They're going to be the people that you meet at conferences, that you all of a sudden start seeing their faces when you go to workshops. And by the way, the community is small to the point where you go to ACX Narrators group on Facebook, and Johnny Heller's there, and Scott Brick is there, and Sean Pratt is there, and that's just the males of the group, let alone all the females that are famous that are on there. Andy Arndt and
the top guys,
right. I mean, so you're basically talking to the Dustin Hoffmans and Robert De Niro's of the voiceover industry. These are the people that are answering your questions. The Bob Bergens, the Porky Pig, the guy that does Porky Pig. I mean, these are the people answering questions for you when you just come up with hey, I've got this new microphone, I'm trying to do this and this, and all of a sudden, like, Scott Brick will answer your question. It's like Dustin Hoffman answering a basic question about acting for you. It's pretty darn amazing. And these are people that are the royalty of voice acting, and they're there and they're accessible for you. So that's why you want to join. And then they're not there to sell their wares. I mean, they do great coaching, and they're all pretty affordable considering what you're getting, but they're not there to do that. They're there to help, and everybody is so helpful. And you know this, John, it's such a great community. I think there's something real special about the voiceover community and audiobook narrators. We're not. It's not a dog eat dog. There's competition, but it's not competition with each other. It's like if you get hired for a gig and I don't, it's not because you've got a better voice or anything. It's because the person that did the hiring has got a certain voice in their head, and you just happen to match it. Like you might do a better American accent than I do, for instance. So it's very, very, very possible.
Not sure about that, but
well, my American accent's wonky. I've been told this before. So,
really?
No, I'm just joking. It's like you being told your British accent's
Yeah,
funky. No, but I'm just saying it. You never know what the person's voice is in their mind that they're trying to cast for, and that you just can't take that personally. So in other words, we're not competing against each other. It's so therefore. The egos are kind of, everybody's got an ego at some point, but that's not what it's all about. So you find people that are trying to give you a leg up. They're always trying to help you out, and that's what you find. And you find you don't just have one mentor; you've got a dozen mentors.
Yeah.
Maybe with one in particular that's going to help you with the software portion of it, like how to work with your digital audio workstation, your DAW, and get working on that. And somebody else that's going to help you with auditions, and so it's just great. And those types of groups, I don't know exist anywhere else. It used to be you could go to places like Edge Studios and they had the feedback forum and stuff, which I don't think exists anymore. So I might be wrong. You can correct me on that or leave a comment. But so there's a real benefit to that. So like I said, love it or hate it, Facebook has a value, and I think it's within the groups right now more than anything else. And the groups that pertain to voiceover and audiobook narration are a really good place to start.
I think it's a really great point that you made as well. There's not many industries that you could have access to the top people just to answer your basic questions. I mean, that's pretty. Right. It's pretty special.
Yeah, and these same people hold workshops, and they'll hold business workshops and whatever. And for $375 or $425 or whatever that might equate to in your currency, it's they're like either a whole day or sometimes over the course of a weekend. You're surrounded by, you've got the peers, you've got publishers that are there that you can talk to and do breakout sessions with. You've got an evening social hour that you can have drinks with people and network with people and learn from them. And then these are the same people. This is your community all of a sudden, right? So these are the same people that you're going to meet in conferences and everywhere else along the way. And they're the people that are going to end up being your coaches and your mentors. And it's a tight-knit community. It's fun, and thank goodness that there's so many good people in it, because with a tight-knit community, you want the people that you're with to be nice and kind and generous, and that's what I found. So
yeah, absolutely. I think it's just great. You went over to is it Atlanta? Was that right? You went over to that. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I went to VoiceOver Atlanta. I haven't done that for a couple of years because they held they missed it one year when COVID first started in 2020. 2021 they did it virtual.
Right.
And I spoke there. I did I was one of the presenters in 2021, but that was a virtual thing, so it wasn't quite the same experience. They held it again this year. I did not go. It seemed it's going to be the last one they're holding this year, because Gerald, the organizer of it's not going to hold it anymore. Right, So, and I just didn't go this year, but it was great to present. It was even though it was virtual, and I did go twice when it was in Atlanta. It was great. I mean, you've got a hotel filled with 800 voiceover professionals and audiobook narrators, and he said we occupied the entire hotel. You had narrators, voiceover actors, and some people and some pilots, and that's about it. So it was just everybody in the elevator was wearing a tag, and they were voiceover artists. So talk about networking opportunities, and publishers were there too, like I said. So you got an opportunity to hobnob with some of the best, and people that were casting directors were there. So talk about great opportunities in the social hour opportunities. But again, you weren't there to sell yourself, but it was the opportunities were there, and the opportunities to learn. The sessions were great. So I did that. I did World Voices conference. My wife and I went to the Independent Audiobook Awards in Kansas City, and that was great. That was in June, a couple years back in 2019. Went to Johnny Heller's workshop in New England this past October. Did that too. So there's opportunities to travel around, and again, these people that you're seeing there are like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you since Facebook, or I haven't seen you since since the last conference we were at or whatever. So looking forward to doing more of those now that things are opening up again. So it's a great opportunity to do that. So once you start getting into the business more, and you can establish yourself as a business, and you can write off these trips too as a tax write-off, it's kind of nice to be able to really make a business out of it. It's kind of a nice thing. So
absolutely. I'd love to come over and do a few of those workshops. I was looking at one, the Johnny Heller and Sean Pratt's, they do the double ones, don't they? The non-fiction and fiction over like a weekend or something. I'd love to go come over and do one of those. I think the closest thing I've ever been to was just a little meetup that we had in Manchester
Hmm.
the sort of England in here in the UK, and it was advertised like everyone on Facebook, the whole group, the
Yeah.
UK's voiceover and audiobook narration group, and there was 6 of us that turned up.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, really great people. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lady who was working for she had sort of like an ongoing sort of role in Grand Theft Auto Online, which they
Oh, okay.
record in Leeds, which is near where I live, which was pretty interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's some really nice people and interesting, people who worked on some interesting things there. But it was just it was just a little bit disheartening because there isn't that number there. There isn't that amount of
Right.
people,
And it
yeah.
costs a lot to fly over here for you and stuff like that. It's not cheap to do that. It'd be the same for us
Yeah,
to fly over there. But
yeah,
it's but if you can save up and do one a year or something like that, it's
hmm,
great. And you could, once you're over here, you can stay over here for a few days and
yeah,
see the sights or whatever. So you choose a city that's hosting it. If it's New York City or Boston or someplace like that, that's got, or
yeah,
L.A. or wherever you feel like going,
mm,
because they're holding them all over the place now. And
hmm,
Johnny, now that they're starting to do them more, even Johnny Heller was saying that they're going to really start populating them around, and they're doing one in
yeah,
Florida, they're doing one in Chicago, so you
yeah,
can kind of pick and choose and save up. And unfortunately, they didn't give us a lot of notice on these two because they're trying to ramp it up, and so they're
yeah,
like, oh, we're going to have one in April and one here, and it's like, well, I can't quite make those,
yeah.
but they'll
I
be
think
coming around.
I
So
think it's Andy. Is it Andy Arnett? Is that her last name? I can't
Andy
remember. Yeah,
Arndt,
Andy Arnett.
yeah,
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 I believe that she's in that sort of crowd. In that coaching crowd as well. And
hmm,
she's based in the UK, I believe.
oh,
So
okay,
I'm hoping that she
okay,
drags them all over, and we can do
oh
I
yeah, for
can get it.
sure.
That'd be
Yeah,
really
that'd be
nice.
great. Yeah, it would be great if they had some bigger ones over there too. I mean,
Mm,
that would be an opportunity for my wife and I to fly over to across the pond to where
yeah,
you are. That would be great because she's always looking for an opportunity to go over there too. So,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, that'd be great. So
yeah,
that yeah, there's a lot of ways to interact and to do that stuff, and um, any chance you get really, and
yeah.
however you can save your money to do so.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And now that
Yep.
things are opening up again, and it's a little bit easier for international travel, it's definitely on the list.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and now unfortunately we are sort of coming close to an end here. I just wanted to end. Obviously, thank you so much for donating your time to us
Oh
for us
yeah, for
today.
sure. Thank you. It's
Um,
been great.
I just wanted to end on asking you about the future. What does the future hold for you? Are you any exciting projects coming up that you're looking forward to, and what can we look forward to coming out from you?
Oh man. I've got books now lined up through August, so you'll be glad to know, probably. So just one after the other,
Yeah.
and a lot of good ones. Another one from Andrew Van Wey coming up, which is a sequel
Nice.
to Blind Sight, and it's kind of interesting. Forsaken, which was the last one that I did, was
Yeah.
actually a prequel. So yeah, so we're gonna do another one. Whatever else is coming up, I just signed up with a couple other publishers that are kind of new platforms
Nice.
that are throwing things out there with new auditions. There's another audition I was just sent yesterday, so
Mm.
I don't have time for it necessarily between my day job and the other audiobooks that I'm already got in line. But I
Yeah.
love the idea of kind of doing them. So I'll see. It might be that I don't like to double up jobs, as you know, because it's just too much. I like to
Yeah.
do them very linear
Hmm.
fashion. But who knows, man? I might get crazy and try to do two at once. We'll see what happens. I don't want to overload anybody, including myself. But we'll see. But
Yeah.
I'm just excited, and the fact that the bigger publishers are starting to awaken to to who I'm at, to who I am out there is great too, and
Yeah.
that that could lead to bigger and better things as well. It seems like once that ball gets rolling, it seems to keep on propagating. So that's great.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
if that happens, great. If not, I've got a lot of great independent folks that I'm working with, and those series just keep going, and I keep getting work from them. So
Hmm.
I'm happy. I'm doing what I want to do, man. I'm rolling with it every single day, and like I tell everybody, I love audiobook narration. Every single day I'm building an audiobook, that's going to be out
Yeah.
there until the sun blows up.
Yeah.
So I like that. It's part of what I do, and it's part of my passion, and I'm really fortunate to be able to do all that. So
That's awesome, man. So it's really inspiring, to be honest. Just the whole like mindset and outlook, because I think it's so easy to get a little bit bogged down and stressed if if you've got deadlines and things are coming up, and maybe it's not hasn't been like a smooth road recording wise. You can sort of lose that. You can lose why you're doing it and why you enjoyed it in the first place. The idea of storytelling, which reminds me as well. Another message that I saw in your TikTok account was to just tell the story. Just that's the most important thing. I think that's you sort of need it printed out over the walls of your
I do.
office.
I've got it written down and it's pasted to my monitor there. Just tell the story, because it's too easy to get involved with saying the words instead of telling the story. So I had to finally, after 5 years of narrating, I finally got around to writing that down and making it make sense for me. I think it's made me a better narrator, hopefully.
I think you need merch. When you hit 10,000, release T-shirts and you can have it.
I think you're right. You're right. Yeah, I'll get you a free T-shirt.
Oh, thank you.
At least. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us. And
John, thank you. It's been great.
Wonderful. I hope you've enjoyed it. And would you like to mention a few of your TikTok username and any sort of information that you want people to go check out?
Sure.
And follow?
It's Tom_voiceover. So at Tom_voiceover on TikTok. You can find me. My website is tomvoiceover.com. Everything's on there. So between those two things, that'd be great. Yeah, look me up.
I'll put the links in the show notes as well.
Oh, perfect. Good.
On
Good deal.
So people can do it. Awesome. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks, John.